Welcome to the People of AI podcast, showcasing inspiring people with interesting stories in the field of artificial intelligence. I'm Ashley Oldacre. Let's jump right in. This podcast is sponsored by Google. Any remarks made by the speakers are their own and are not endorsed by Google. Hi, everybody. Welcome. All right, I'm super excited to have Jeanine here with us today. I'm so honored that she took the time and that you're here to share all of your amazing journey and experience with us. And to start off, I'm going to read your bio so that people can get to know you a little bit. So Jeanine Banks is the Vice President and General Manager of the Developer X business and Head of Developer Relations at Google. She focuses on empowering millions of developers to build AI-enabled businesses and experiences for billions of users worldwide. Jeanine is responsible for many of Google's most popular dev products, including Flutter, Dart, Go, Firebase, and Kaggle, and leads Google's overall engagement with developers across AI, machine learning, AR/VR, mobile, and web platforms. Before Google, Jeanine launched dozens of products across Amazon, GE, IBM, CA Technologies, and Axway. She also founded 2 digital health startups. Originally from Brooklyn, New York, Jeanine started coding as an intern at the Brookhaven National Laboratory, BNL for short. Today, she mentors underrepresented tech founders and advocates for increased diversity in tech investments. Welcome, Jeanine.
Thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
So we'll jump right in, and I'd love for you to, I gave sort of a very, very brief overview, but I'd love for you to tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, it all started when I was in kindergarten. No, I'm kidding.
I was like, yes, take us all the way back.
All the way back. From the crib to, corporation. No. So originally, like you said, I'm from Brooklyn, and I'm proud to be from a pretty large family. If you go to New York and maybe certain parts of New York, there's a such thing as infamous Mitchells. And, I'll admit my maiden name is Mitchell. And blame my dad for that. But I'm one of 8 and one brother, a lot of females in the house. And my mom has always been such an inspiration for me because growing up in where we're from, our neighborhood, our community, it was not always the easiest place to grow up. But I think I learned a lot of great lessons. I had my mom as a role model. No matter what challenges we went through, there were also so many happy times, so many times as a family that we got to spend and have fun. But most importantly, the thing that I remember most is my mom's entrepreneurial spirit, her drive. She sold everything.
Wow.
Think Tupperware, think Mary Kay and Avon, but also just chocolate, homemade lollipops. Wow. And, clothing, women's clothing, and turned our kitchen in our apartment into a restaurant.
Wow. So an entrepreneur at heart. Yeah.
Exactly. And seeing that, she was always going to find a way to make things happen, to make sure we had what we needed. Wow. And that just rubbed off on me. I just need to be creating. I need to be taking a fair amount of risk, trying new things. And I like to help other people do that too.
Well, you're in the right industry for that. And it sounds like you also took that creativity and embedded it in your journey. So you grew up in this very numerous family with lots of kids and lots of people around. And how did that evolve from there into your schooling, into tech? And did that form any part of, you were saying you became more of an entrepreneur and had that entrepreneurial spirit. How did that eventually keep growing and take you to the next step?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, first of all, I made a joke earlier about kindergarten, not quite kindergarten, but definitely in elementary school. There were just so many fun times. I remember when we got our first set of computers in my elementary school. And we had the first Macs in our library, and then we had got some other computers after that. But it just caught my attention. I remember in class, other students were just sort of not really into it as much, but it just caught my attention. And at the same time, my dad, who was an assistant manager at a grocery store, he had a subscription to a magazine called Byte. BYTE. And I'm giving away my age because that magazine is out of circulation. But anyway, I used to read his leftover copies. He had a whole stack of these Byte magazines, the old issues, in the living room. And I would just check them out and browse as a kid. And that just, really sparked my interest in science and math, technology in general. And so years later, when I was in high school and I had the chance to do that internship at B&L, it was already some curiosity there. But I think that definitely was a time that kind of fully opened my eyes and my ambitions to go further and eventually create a career in tech.
The curiosity in computers, was that linked to how it worked or the fact that there was this technology that you could interact with? What was sort of the foundations of this curiosity of wanting to learn more?
It was this idea of creating, I would say. Because, so for example, there was one of the games that they had loaded on the computer was called Logo. And so we would, in fourth grade, my computer class, we would play with this game, and basically you would enter different mathematical coordinates and it would spit out a graphical rendering of using some math behind the scenes, and just seeing that creativity of creating all these geometric shapes and patterns on the screen. It was like, wow, this notion of being able to create something just from your imagination. And so I remember they paired us two kids to a computer. We didn't have that many as a school. And so my friend and I, we would sort of like come up with ideas of like what new patterns, what things we want to create. So yeah, I think it was just that sense of you just had to think of something and you can create that. I love that.
And that has also evolved in when you were learning and coding HTML and creating the websites. Take us from that point on and how it continued, the technology kept on being embedded in your life.
So when I was I think it was 10th grade, in high school, my school, Longwood High School in Middle Island, New York. I'm giving the shout out. Middle Island, no. And our school had a partnership with the local college, which was Dowling College. And this was at a time when transportation systems were disjointed. Probably, we can't even think of a time when bus systems didn't coordinate with airports and didn't coordinate with seaports, like subway systems. So that's back when things were totally just separate from each other and municipalities planned them separately. But this was starting to become, with globalization and global trade, it was a need for integrating these different systems. And that's what's called intermodal transportation. So my high school and Dowling College partnered to get more students into this new intermodal transportation degree program. And so I said yes to participate as a cohort of students who were invited to do the first pilot of this intermodal transportation program.
Being a part of the transportation or designing
in the college,
it?
So both. So being in college, so 10th grade in high school, now I find myself officially a college student as well at night.
Wow.
And so there was a school bus that would transport us from school at the end of 8-period school day to Dowling College for 2 classes per semester. And so this intermodal transportation program, I feel that was innovation. The people that came up with that program. I have to say it was not super fun. So within a couple of months, I literally was one of 2 students left.
Oh, wow.
Yes. The other students dropped out and I was one of
Talk about
2
tenacity and not giving
left.
up.
Well, I don't know if it was tenacity or if it was this boy who was, and a freshman, already graduated from high school. So I ended up going to Dowling College through this program. I actually stayed in it through the rest of high school. Wow. And then what happened was I graduated from high school with a bunch of credits. But I knew I was not going to finish fully the rest of my college education in that program. And that's when I switched over to computer science.
Okay.
So I was able to switch into computer science. Now, why did I do that? My math teacher, who was also my robotics teacher, I was pursuing healthcare robotics as a program, but those classes were far and few between. Sort of like only available in winter semesters or something like that.
Yeah.
And I was not trying to be in school for a whole bunch more years. So my math professor, Dr. Philip Ratner, said, hey, we're not hosting that course, but if you switch to computer science, at least these credits will count, and you can take some other classes that I am teaching this semester. And I'm like, okay, because I'm not trying to stay here for 4 more years after being in college.
Right, and having
in high
crammed
school.
college. Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. So that's how I switched into computer science, was thank Dr. Ratner for that. And I really appreciate him doing that.
That's awesome. So that skyrocketed you forward. So what happened next?
So, even for my first semester in college, I literally went to school. My eldest sister, she dropped me off at the college campus with $20 and a blanket and a backpack.
Wow.
And you might say, okay, wait a minute. The story just went like some other direction. So my mom was sick. And like I mentioned, I'm one of 8. So my sister, by this point, my eldest sister, she had 6 of her own children. Wow. And then the 6 of us, from myself and my 5 younger siblings, she took us in. No, myself and my 4 younger siblings, she took us in. So she had 11 children by the time I was in high school. I mean, senior year of high school.
Wow.
So she did the best she could and made sure I got through school, along with a whole bunch of other people that supported me to get through school, because that was such a difficult time in my life.
It takes a village.
Seriously. And so I get dropped off at college, backpack, a blanket, and $20. And basically was like, I need to hustle. So by this point, I already had been a developer for about almost 4 years, from learning it years ago at B&L. And so I started doing consulting, side projects, helping businesses to build websites for their companies. And everybody was like, I need to get on the web. I need to hang my digital shingle, with everything that was happening with the .com boom. So that's really how I got by and kind of kept afloat. But at the same time, I got a ton of real world experience of building development teams, contracted teams across India and Eastern Europe and the US and South America, and bringing these teams together to build these new websites for these companies that were trying to go online.
Well, you have so many different chapters that we could dive deeper into. I think I'd love for you to, talk about how your entry and your journey into artificial intelligence, machine learning, how that got started. What was that sort of entry point like for you? Was it correlated with a pivotal moment in your life? Was it correlated with like a new aha moment of like, oh wow, this technology is different? Or was it kind of an evolution of like, okay, well, I studied statistics, or I was part of this this evolution of big data and working with working within the industry, and then it sort of was the next obvious stepping stone? Yeah.
No, this is another non-traditional route. But so years later, so I mentioned I was doing consulting while I was still in school. Then I graduated, got a job as a software developer at a couple startups. Then I went into Canon USA, U.S. division of Canon Inc., the camera company, copier company. And then I moved into an enterprise software company called CA, which back then was like top 5 largest of software companies in the world. And then I went and did another startup stint, .com bust and economic downturn of 2008. Ended up going to a competing company of the startup that I was at, Sterling Commerce, which was like an offshoot of CA Technologies. And then within a couple of months, Sterling Commerce was acquired by IBM.
Oh,
so I ended up at IBM. And that was just like really a game changer for how I thought about technology, but also where I started to get exposed and start really thinking about AI and machine learning. And so you might recall this is around 2008, 2009, and it was all about a smarter planet.
Mm-hmm.
That was, IBM's, not just like a marketing mantra, but really a belief that technology and information, big data, analytics, and AI can really weave together new experiences that power society, and ideally for the better.
Mm-hmm.
And so that just was so inspiring for me. And I remember joining IBM through the acquisition of Sterling Commerce. And we got orientation just like regular IBMer employees. And that orientation took us through sort of the original founding of IBM and the 100-year history and all the technology and from calculators and all these different machine and mainframes and all of these things. And so now what was going to be possible with the next innovation to come in terms of compute power, in terms of storage, which is just like growing leaps and bounds, and the cost per gigabyte dropping dramatically. And so that, and then the massive amounts of data that was being generated. So that was just such a opportune time where I felt that IBM was really thinking about these problems. And that was the first time that I started to think about them in that way, and how there are applications for AI and more so machine learning to be able to be applied to different world problems, whether it's hunger, whether it's water supply, energy, you pick a global problem, climate. And I think that some of the brightest individuals that I've ever met at IBM were thinking about ways to solve those problems with AI. And that was really, really exciting to me.
And based off of the work that you're doing now, I can also see how you've carried that on in your current work as well. So it shows that you care about bridging and solving the world's sort of hardest problems with this new technology. And you do this, I think, by working and supporting and enabling developers with what they're building as well. Can you talk a bit more about that?
Yeah, it's super personal for me. I think about how we can create more access for people to take advantage of this technology to the extent that they're educated, they're able to learn the technology, not necessarily because they went to college or a formal education path, but just get it into people's hands. And this is where open source becomes so instrumental in terms of increasing access for more people to have these tools, to the latest, greatest, state of the art, and then be able to translate that or transform that into some sort of product, into a business, into new career skills. And now suddenly you're talking about changing your community. You're talking about changing, like, for example, a Flutter developer responded to one of our satisfaction surveys we do on a quarterly basis and said, "Thank you. You saved my country."
Wow.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes. Like, when you get that kind of feedback and you really can connect how that access to technology empowers people to create and build, that then changes their standard of living, their quality of living for themselves, for others in their communities, in their countries. I just feel that that's what we need to be making available to as many people as we can. And unfortunately, the reality is there are still billions of people on this planet who do not have access to the latest technology. Many don't even have internet access.
Right.
And so whether it's a lack of internet access or it's a lack of digital skilling, right? And then the tools, and so there's definitely obstacles. And I think that at Google, what's been really inspiring and motivating for me personally is that we have the ability to affect change on all of those levels.
Yeah.
And
that scale too.
That scale, which then opens up just unprecedented access for people.
Yeah.
And that's what happened to me. You know, like when I think about it, I'm an intern at Brookhaven National Laboratory, and freely and open available access to technology that maybe it wasn't pervasive yet. This is like early internet. This is HTML 4.1, open for comment.
Wow.
Not even standardized published specification yet.
Wow.
And they put this in my hands. They put the information, the documentation, they put the technology, the machinery, the compute power, gave me that access. And so being able to then turn that into something empowered me and set me on this journey.
I'd love to talk about this concept of access, because I feel like AI has there's been these multiple doors throughout history that has enabled access to technology. And you talked about one when you were at BNL. And I feel like AI has created more of this. Can you talk more about what you're seeing and how that's enabling, how AI now is enabling and unlocking developers more so than before or differently?
So to answer that question, I have to go back and talk about PCs.
More stories.
I have to talk about PCs.
I love it.
So I remember my first semester in school in college at Dowling. It was a journalism course that I had to take, one of the core classes I had to take. And one of the papers, I had to write a persuasive paper on pick an issue and take one side of the issue and then try to persuade my point of view. So typical college first year type of assignment. So I did a little bit of preliminary research and picked as my topic the PC revolution. And at that time, this is like 96, and there was this raging debate, and it's shocking to even think about it right now, but a raging debate if PCs were going to do more harm than good. And
this sounds familiar.
Yes. And there was this debate about, on the one hand, maybe there's unbounded productivity that can be unlocked with PCs. Mm-hmm. On the other hand, wait a minute, maybe this was going to cause all kinds of lack of productivity because maybe workers were going to become too dependent on machines to do their jobs. Would they not get the skills? Would they not put in the effort anymore to learn the complex tasks? Or if you took that away from workers, that's what the articles in the news back then, they call them workers. If you put that into technology, well, do worker salaries go down? Do you need less labor? Mm-hmm. Does this sound familiar?
Yes.
I think so. It sounds familiar. And so now, but then it's sort of played out. Mm-hmm. We've had time to see. Mm-hmm. And yes, massive productivity boom over a decade plus, couple of decades. And we've seen like just never before. And so I think that the conversation about AI is a very similar one of like, wait, more productivity, or is there danger or risk here? Is this going to cause less opportunity for people versus more opportunity for people? And the reality is, I think there's in total, overall, there's going to be much more opportunity for people that we can't even imagine what those opportunities are today. And it's sort of, that's just how new technologies and technology adoption curves happen, where you can't really predict what it will be 5 years, 10 years. Right. You can only look back and go, oh, wow, can you believe we got here compared to 10 years ago? So I think that it's a similar kind of trajectory and sort of cycle, but maybe it's happening a bit more compressed right now. Right. Because I think just a year ago, we weren't talking about pervasive use of AI within a professional or business setting. And when it comes to developers, we weren't necessarily talking about a couple of years ago, 90-something% of developers having access to AI and using it in their daily workflow to some extent. Now we are. Yeah. Right. Yeah. And so there's been different innovations that have been introduced over the last few years that have made that possible, which I think is great. It's great for the overall industry, whether open source or even proprietary technologies that have come out. I think it's all just going to advance the possibilities of what we can do.
Yeah.
And I do think that, even developers, they tell us in the research that we do that AI is helping them to be more productive. It's, for example, not only in coding tasks, being able to automate some of the coding type of work, but other parts of the software development lifecycle, from generating tests or helping to fix bugs that are in code, helping to ensure great safety and security in how software is built, and so on and so forth.
This is all very exciting. And Google has released so much since December of last year between Gemini, AI Studio, Project IDX, Kaggle models, new hardware, and a host of capabilities on Vertex AI. And now, Gemma. So let's lay everything out, starting with Gemini.
Absolutely. It's just been amazing, Ashley, to see so much innovation coming out of being in the Gemini era and how the developer community, researchers, partners are responding to all the different releases. With Gemini, we introduced our most capable model, and we introduced it in 3 sizes with Ultra, Pro, and Nano. And it just gave you the chance to see the breadth of different use cases that you can get through our API across those different sizes. And now we realize that it's really important for us to continue to lean into the commitment we have to the open source community by providing an open model for everyone to be able to create and innovate around as we do so in the most safe and responsible way.
So I'm kind of new to this. So you have Gemini Ultra, Gemini Pro, Gemini Nano, which are all sort of under one sort of system. And then you have these open models. What's the biggest difference?
Well, the key thing to recognize is that, our Google DeepMind team and our researchers at Google have spent a lot of time building the science and technology behind Gemini. And so with Gemma, we're actually leveraging and sharing much of that same science and technology to create an open model family that is available for developers and researchers to build their applications. So think of it as sort of siblings in the Google ecosystem, and being able to serve different needs depending on your requirements. In particular, with Gemma as our open model, we released open weights in 2 sizes. This is the 2 billion parameter model and 7 billion roughly as well. And these models are really set up for use on developers' laptops and desktops to be able to do fine-tuning of the models and tailoring those variants to the use cases that they have. Also, we see and expect developers to run fine-tune variants of Gemma on cloud and various hardware as well. So we have Vertex AI, where you can be able to use our, end-to-end MLOps platform to be able to tune Gemma as well as test and your different use cases and experiment pretty quickly. But also we have the Google Kubernetes engine on cloud that allows you to select from your choice of hardware options from GPU and TPU and CPU, depending on how you want to customize the infrastructure to your requirements. So being able to get that one-click deployment with Vertex, or have that customization of your infrastructure with GKE, we think that there's a wide variety of opportunities for developers to be able to power the applications that they build with Gemma. The other important thing to note is that this is something that takes a village, or should I say a whole open community, right, to make happen. And so we've made it a real priority to make sure, like we've done in the past with open technologies, to partner and collaborate with all kinds of contributors externally and partners. So for example, we work closely with Hugging Face, to make sure that Gemma models work well and are supported in the Transformers library, and also being able to publish and share amongst that community, as well as with Kaggle, being able to access not only from a licensing standpoint, consenting to terms there, but it's the largest community for AI and data science as well. So imagine being able to run competitions and be able to share learnings and share solutions for different use cases right there. And then we partnered really closely. We're so proud of the collaboration we have with NVIDIA. And with that, we've been able to optimize Gemma models for NVIDIA's hardware. So we think that giving access to some of the most cutting edge technology and infrastructure resources will make it possible for developers and researchers to take the ideas that they have and really bring them to life.
So this is very exciting for the community because they finally get like their hands on these open models, and they're going to get to play and sort of build on top of them and even change them and tweak them. And are you seeing any, I mean, I know this just released, but sort of what would be a good use case for an open model for building with Gemma, for example, versus Gemini?
Well, like I said, for example, we see a lot of developers that are using APIs as well as open models. So for where that makes sense for some developers, you're going to use Gemini and to be able to do some of your easy prototyping and prompt engineering and tuning, and which helps you kind of get going quickly, and it's the fastest way to build your applications. For example, we provide the Google AI Studio, which gives you that fast path to building with Gemini. On the other hand, even as part of that same workflow, developers who choose to use the open model using Gemma, then there's more likely focus around fine tuning, because as I mentioned earlier, we're releasing the model weights. We also are providing quick starts to make that really easy. We're providing tools support. So for example, you can use Gemma with Keras 3.0, which supports multi-framework backend with TensorFlow, PyTorch, and being able to run that way. We think that it's important also to integrate into the vast set of other tools so that developers can do fine tuning. They can work in their existing environments, really want to meet developers where they are. And then we think that that's going to make it really easy to have that end-to-end workflow.
I hear a lot about this concept of fine tuning, which seems to be a big thing for developers. Can you briefly explain what that is?
Absolutely. So it's really kind of bringing additional data that the model was not previously trained with, and being able to continue to generalize it to more use cases and more domains.
So it can be your personal data that you, like if you wanted to build your own app based off of your own, like if you're a bank, for example, and you wanted to sort of analyze, client uses or whatever, you could use that data and then train these models on the data.
Yeah. And then the other thing too, though, is that you're going to have sort of that base of, for example, let's say it's you're doing text summarization, and say the model has been trained to work with text that is in certain languages and not in others. But then you want to be able to expand the quality of the results of the model to other languages as well. Or if you have a certain subject matter, for example, a model that's trained very well in sort of a general space, but not specialized in healthcare. So then you want to be able to fine tune to the terminology, the medical workflow, the different constructs that are relevant in healthcare, and be able to leverage text summarization, but in the healthcare context, and have a higher quality result.
Oh, that's fascinating. Yeah, I'm starting to get it now. I'm not a developer, but as I can start to understand why a developer would be super excited by these new releases. This sounds very, very cool.
And so we expect, like you could just imagine, the possibilities are probably endless because there's so many domains. I mean, we have hundreds of countries, so you're going to have different local concepts, ideas, institutions, just so many different things that people will come up with. And that's really the point too, is being able to provide open models that allow developers to use this technology in a really safe and responsible way, but come up with things that, perhaps we didn't come up with. And I think that's the benefit of open communities in general, is advancing the field.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know sometimes when a new tool comes out, it's easy to be like, this is awesome. How do I use it? And I feel like Kaggle, which is our data science platform with anyone who can participate in a competition, I feel like that would be a really good place to start to explore and play with these open models and even get some examples of how to use it. Is that something, is Kaggle going to play a big role in connecting with Gemma?
Absolutely. One of the things that we thought about was, first of all, the question is the value that Kaggle brings, which is really unique. For years, it's been the place people go for data science competitions and machine learning competitions. As part of that, that means that you have a single place where people are stress testing and validating many different types of models for a range of different use cases, and you get real empirical results about how well those models perform in those cases. So we think that now with large language models, this is just a great way to extend what Kaggle has always done, and being able to now provide open models like Gemma, developers will be able to continue to push the field forward through competitions, sharing the solutions that they build, as well as the various resources that go with that, whether it's the data they use for fine tuning or being able to share the models, the variants that they create. So we do expect that there will be a lot of different variants that developers and contribute, and that then provides the opportunity for someone else to take those and apply them to their use case.
That's super exciting. When you say like competitions, a Kaggle competition is where you say, hey, developer community, build this with this goal. And then the community goes out and builds it and then it's reviewed. Or is it like, here is a model, use this model and build something with it, or here, create your own model, or sort of what are the competitions like? How do they look? Like, what is the format really of a competition?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's interesting because I mentioned that Kaggle has a long history of running and hosting competitions for data science as well as machine learning. So when you think about the breadth of that space, it's everything from data visualizations against data sets. It's, tuning models and publishing variants. And in other cases as well, even building models against a problem statement. So the cool thing is that you have that variety or diversity of different kinds of use cases that competitions can be created around. And, that's one of the beauty. One thing that's pretty cool too is each year we run a survey for all Kaggle users to share their perspectives on what they're using from a tools perspective, how they are seeing the field evolve, some of the things that they need to be successful, and things generally that's on their minds. We publish that data set back to the community, and we invite everyone to then participate in either, data visualizations and other contributions around the survey data set. So this has been I would say, a pretty long tradition that the Kaggle team has done. And now with Gemma and other open models, that I just continue to see some really interesting things come from the community.
Very excited to see what is created and what our community builds. Speaking of sort of the larger Google ecosystem, as the leader for the developer pillar at Google, I think it's important to note that as a leader, one of the goals is to make sure that all of the AI Google products that we offer fit well into the general developer ecosystem. Because the goal ultimately is for any developer to build seamlessly with our products, or also to integrate their work streams, their flow into their ecosystem, into their workflow as well. And I would love for you to talk about, if it's possible, how Google's thinking about this and the direction that we're going. Because I personally think like this is such an important mission to make sure that we are giving developers the best experience and the option to choose between different tools to ultimately achieve the outcomes that they want.
So I think that maybe something that would be true 10 years from now or longer is that you're going to see a vast set of tools available for developers to build with. And, developers are going to continue to choose what makes the most sense for what they're trying to build. And, it's not an insurmountable hurdle to pick and choose the things you want to use and then make those things work. And so our perspective at Google has been, how do we give developers time back to focus on the creative things that they are building and the problems that they're solving, and not like this gluing together of these different tools and spending time on sort of plumbing and making things work. And actually, from the research we've done and from the developers I've talked to, they think that's a really valuable time for us. Effort from our part to try to help them, save that time and be more productive. So, for example, with projects like Projet IDX, that was one of the key inspirations. Is we found when developers were looking to build applications for multiple platforms, whether it's, mobile apps that run on Android or iOS, or if it's web applications, backend services, it was like, okay, if I want this application to run in all these environments, I have to be specialized in all these environments. There's whole different tool chains for them. Getting all of that to work and being a specialist in those different areas is next to, well, it's not impossible. I wouldn't put anything past the ingenuity of developers, but it's takes a lot of time and
it's challenging.
Yeah. So that was sort of the key insight that led us to create Projet IDX. And the spirit is that, okay, how can we make it easier where these things are well integrated from the start? We bootstrap a workspace for you with the libraries and plugins that are most commonly used for what you want to build, and you get to choose from a library of templates for what kind of applications you want to build. For example, there's a Gemini template, so if you want to build AI powered applications with Gemini, and then it tees all of that up. It configures and provisions all of those tools, all of those resources. It runs natively in the cloud. You access it through a web browser. It's like, wow, this saves so much time. And that's what we've been hearing from those who tried it so far. And it's just been a phenomenal reaction to it. But this is just the start. We still have so much more to do. And I think the way that the team who's working on Projet IDX is approaching it is like, how do we be collaborative? So I think we're going to continue it that way.
So based off of what I've seen, it's a dashboard that connects you to all of, like, you could use Angular, you could use Firebase. It's like whatever app you want to build, it sort of has this platform where you can connect to whatever it is that you need to build at the time, or that you need to build whatever it is that you're trying to build, is my understanding. Is that right? Yeah,
it is. And the other thing too is it's not just about so here's the thing. I think you can find various different studies out there that point to how much time developers spend actually coding in any given day or any given project. And what we've seen over the years is that percentage of time spent has changed and has gone down somewhat in terms of how much time developers are spending on writing code or debugging code. And so we find that it's important that we're not only helping them be even more productive with writing code, in which AI assistance has been great to be able to do code generation and fixing code and other suggestions. But we think that the rest of the development lifecycle is ripe for making improvements to simplify how things work, applying AI to those problems, whether it is testing, performance, monitoring, security use cases. After you've deployed your application, okay, when and how do you upgrade it? When do you choose to onboard the latest versions of open source libraries that you might have used? So there are a whole host of questions that have to be considered. And from what we've been hearing, those are places that developers would like us to help make that easier as well. So I think you're going to see over time, of course, continuing to focus on making it, the whole coding workflow is much easier, but it's really about the whole development lifecycle and helping developers get time back in their day.
I love that. Yeah, I saw in Project IDX there's a feature where you can, call out Gemini. You can be like, hey, so how do I write this piece of code? And it'll generate it, and you can copy paste and iterate. And there's a great video and we'll link it in the show notes about, how it's being able to use. So it's super exciting, and it just seems like it's just such a helpful tool to make the process easier for sort of integrating different things too.
Oh, for sure. And, the other nice thing too, we just gave Project IDX another boost. We just introduced some additional features for AI assistance. For example, oftentimes you'll see services that might have a chat bot available, and you can kind of ask it questions to help me write this Python script to convert, this line of, library into from another language, let's say from C or from JavaScript. And so the cool thing is that that's out of line, that's out of band. But now we have inline features. Right there in your code, you can interact with Gemini and be able to get help or get assistance to complete the code, but even generate code based on your natural language description of what it is that you want to do. And then see it right there, update in your file. So there's features like that are just come in really handy.
I love it. It just seems also less intimidating. It feels like it's unlocking so many things. Well, thank you so much for sharing about more information about all these incredible releases that we have. And we're so excited to see what the developers out there are going to build. And hopefully we'll get a couple of them on the podcast to share what they do create. And I would love for you to maybe share a little bit of your experience of who inspires you being a woman in AI and being a woman in this space.
Thank you. I really love this question because so much of being in not just in AI but in technology is about the inspiration that we get from so many of the forerunners who put down the train tracks, so to speak, for being able to run forward in this space and make a difference. And so we talked today about the importance of open source and open communities for innovation, but also when it comes to AI, how we can provide this technology to the open ecosystem in the most responsible and safe way, and helping everybody build applications safely. So someone that comes to mind for me that inspires me is Marian Croak. Marian is our leader of our responsible AI and human-centered technology team in Google Research. And she and her team has been working across the company as well as with industry to help define responsible AI principles as well as tools that can help us all to practically apply those principles in the things that we build. And so when I think about that, it's really something that I try to approach my own work and the things that I'm doing. Is how do you get scale? It's one thing if you build something, you come up with an idea, you build something, and it benefits yourself or a small set of people. But when you create something that can lift all boats, can lift everyone's skill and capability, then especially in spaces important as the advancement of AI, and doing so in the open, then wow. I mean, the impact of that, I can imagine of Marion's work and what her team does will be felt for years, if not generations to come. So that's super inspiring for me. I hope that I can continue to do work that is helpful to people. And I don't know if I'll have as grand an impact as that, but hopefully it'll be things that matter to a lot of people out there.
Well, I think you being a leader in the space and as a woman, I think, is inspiring enough as well. It's inspiring too. I mean, it's inspiring to me being on your team. I also feel like it just brings a different perspective. We've been talking about this concept of intelligence, right? Sort of we're building artificial intelligence, and there's just all different kinds of, I've been doing a lot of thinking recently about sort of what intelligence is and how it's defined. And it can be defined in a very specific way with values associated to certain kinds of intelligence. And I think the value of having women, men, a diverse group of people that are thinking about the engineering pieces of it, the product pieces of it, the responsible, ethical pieces of it, just help to sort of really bring forth this idea of like what intelligence is and what we're putting out into the world in a way that feels more wholesome and feels more just representative of the people who use our products, the people who build our products as well. And so it's a real pleasure and an honor to see you and Marianne and other people sort of in leadership positions that are helping to bring and make sure that these perspectives and these ethical considerations are really at the forefront of what we're building and how we're serving our community.
I couldn't have said it better. I couldn't have said it better. And so I think on that note, I'll just close with saying that having access, giving people access, as broad access as possible to technology with the proper safeguards, the proper guidelines, is just so critical. And when we're advancing new technologies that have so much potential in the world to impact the world, like AI, having as many people represented in that work and contributing to that work as possible is going to, I think, lead to the best outcome.
Agreed. This has been an extraordinary conversation, and I've learned so much, and we've touched upon so many incredible things. Your personal story, your personal journey has been really wonderful to listen to and very inspirational, and the way that you are bringing that mission of empowering developers and unlocking technology for developers and the broader community, I think speaks to the journey that you started and the journey that you continue to be on. So what words of wisdom or advice or anything else that you'd want to share in helping people sort of on their journeys?
Well, I can't offer any advice that I wouldn't take myself. So what I'm spending a lot of time on is just learning. And I love learning. That's just one of my things. I hate when you get asked that question of like, oh, what's your favorite hobby? And I'm like,
it's learning.
It's never the coolest thing, like other people like, I'm jet skiing and I'm a private pilot, and I'm like, learning, reading. But I think that would be my advice to anyone. It's just like, no matter where you're starting from or what you think you already know, there's so much to keep learning.
Yeah.
I had to go and replenish some of my equipment and my setup at home to get into more of this work and technology. And for me, I learned by doing. Yeah. Mostly. Yeah. And I complement that with taking in a lot of information and talking to lots of people. But I learned by doing. Mm-hmm. So I just kind of got a new Lambda workstation and outfit with some new, RTX A6000s and, it's a really beefed up machine. We'll have to talk about it later. But I want to be able to like work with some of these bigger models and some of the things that are open source, and just sort of learn, what's possible, but also keeping an eye on what some of the risks are, and then what can we do to help innovate and think about ways to solve problems, to solve some of the new challenges that could come up, rather than waiting for those things and then, oh no, we're reacting. Something's,
Right.
But yeah, that would be
lead with curiosity and learning.
Learning, whether if you have the ability to get access to technology, check out some of the open source projects in this space. There are so many. One of the popular ones right now is like LangChain, for doing AI orchestration. But there are many others just cropping up every day. I would also say continue to not only learn by doing, which it's my preference, but there's just so many people with insights, who are exposed to some of these things. So try to build your network. Build your network, plug into the community. Surely there are people that are thinking about sides of the problem or sides of the opportunity you probably haven't thought of yet. Mm-hmm. So you can kind of just ingest as much as you can from them, and then hold on for dear life. This thing is moving and it's fast, and we'll see where it goes. But I think it'll be fantastic.
I'm excited. If you would like to learn more about our conversation or our guests, check out the links below. Please subscribe, and if you're feeling extra generous, give us a 5-star rating. We would love to hear from you, so leave us a comment. We'll read every one. Until next time, thank you for listening.